This is what we find. Either it's been occupied by someone who intended to live here for a period of time, although the climb here is quite severe. That's how he captured the water from the overhang of the cave, and you can tell that there's been droplets inside the cave. He's raked it clear. He's been living here, but there is nothing to show. This tent seems later. I don't think it's been here for 6 years. There's no dust accumulation, so someone has been living here and they've taken away whatever they had brought to the camp. There's a pair of shoes here and they've shrunk. The leather's shrunk about an inch. It's quite a climb to this excavation. It's on a rather steep approach, just about manageable. It's quite loose, so I think they probably use the traverse to get here. I'm particularly curious that people who explore the desert only want to find relics, something which is well before the present day. And what I'm interested in finding is the present day, those who live in the desert, similar to those historically who occupied the lands, and how they now live rather than how they used to live. But of course keeping in touch with both to see what crosses over, if you see what I mean. Certainly a tent does. Living in a tent 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that was a norm. And it's very much the same now, so it hasn't really altered. Seeking shade, water. Tinned food's an interesting one for me because I have an earlier photograph, I'll include this photograph, of 1908. And what was a tented store providing provisions to gold miners. So nothing's really altered, is it? It's the same, only different. So present day archaeologists can touch what has come before. So the tents are slightly different. The environment is just as hostile, just as uncomfortable as it was then. And so, although it's interesting to find something which is particularly old, 100 years old or 50 years old, mustn't lose touch of the fact that man is a very odd, it's not an odd species. There isn't really much new, is there? I'm sure there was detritus at those camps when they left also. So you're able to find them now, it's just different. Glass bottles instead of plastic bottles. And a lot more biodegradable then, but I'm not sure this will break down under UV light in time. But meanwhile, back to the gold findings. So this particular area looked enticing and they put a great amount of work into this. So there's a couple of seams which run horizontal and they exploited them, and I wonder if they found anything. There are other mines in the area. I think they're fairly shallow, but I'm not absolutely sure. But in my previous videos you'll be able to see that I've included some books which you'll be able to use as reference if you're interested in visiting the areas and maybe panning for some gold. Definitely was some here, but I'm not absolutely sure. But certainly in the area there were some strikes. Best by January 2018. Best by January 2018. Usual assortments: beef stew, fish, apricots, sweeties. This has been cleared out prior to reoccupation, and there's some more detritus there, blankets, some foam, pieces of carpet, bottles, tins of beer. Someone's had a go at gold exploration here, and this is the attempt that they made. A couple of excavations, and here we're able to see they've followed the seam. And yesterday I came across a latter day gold explorer who's been collecting quartz and have been judiciously going through to see if there was any indication of gold. What does the latter day dweller use? They use a cheap tent with 2 rods which spring the tent into life. They do the normal, rake out and clear the area. They have an underlay, generally, as in this case, a piece of carpet. It's still quite on surface. And what do they live on? Primarily tin food and water. And there's the catchment. So they've had a saucepan here. They probably use that for cooking, maybe also for catching water. That's what I think, but I'm not absolutely sure. I'm assuming. And those that do live here, well, precious little. It's what you can carry. Immediately above I can see another, I think it's another tunnel. Some mining's taken place. It's in the distance. It's slightly pock-marked. The seam runs vertically, so I think it's rather steep here also. So I'm going to just carry on and traverse. There's some other indications that some exploitation's been taking place. There's certainly investigation. There's the saddle. This is just on the bounds of being crossable, I think. This is it's become quite steep now, so I'm going to have to be a little bit slightly cautious, keep to the larger scree. And just to think, we're in the middle of nowhere. Someone's been up before and they've been looking for geological specimens to perhaps analyse later. This is rather an odd finding, but again it's on the seam which is immediately above the cave that I've been filming. If you were at the back of the Liberal Arts College at the end of Border Highway and then look slightly to your left at about 4 o'clock, you'll see a ridge, and that's where I'm perched at the moment. Above the scree slopes, and the scree is the larger consolidated rocks, the darker in colour, some are almost black, you'll see a ridge, and that is what I'm approaching at the moment. I'm traversing, and there is trace of a trail, perhaps used by deer or mountain goats, and I'm approaching. There's 2 saddles, and this is a really interesting climb, and if you have the time to spend a day here or a weekend, there is a great deal of climbing. Now, it's not vertical climbing, but it is of a nature, it's all virgin, and with a rope, short rope, probably about 60 metres, 70, you'll be able to take on small climbs, and it's interesting. A good way to spend a day, just exploring, going along the slope, the incline. And I'm here in the morning now, it's about 7 o'clock. And this is absolutely perfect. What a lovely place, apart from background noise, but that depending on which way the wind's blowing. But there's some wonderful saddles and a ridge that you can explore. And this breaks you into a more adventurous type of trail walking. Scrambling, as it's called in England. And I'm overwhelmed with it. Really is enjoyable. Who would think? Down from Las Vegas, Boulder Highway, Liberal faculty, then walk behind. Incredible area to explore and climb and have adventures. Well, this is very close to the ridge, and we find another exploitation which has gone on. Let's get closer. And there's the quartz seam that they were investigating. Probably about 2 meters high. It's a vertical excavation. Here's the climbs at the very top of the screeds. You can either drop down to these from the top, or you can climb the screeds. The screed is consolidated, the large rocks are consolidated. So I'm solo here, so I'm not going to be too brave. There we are. And immediately behind is Las Vegas. Here's rather an odd find. Some old valves. Perhaps from two-way radio, someone doing some experimentation. Perhaps military training. Let me just... And I just wonder what these might be from. I'm thinking a radio set. So let's take a panoramic view. Down below to my right is a railroad pass. Just on the outside of the screen on the right. So we have two peaks, a couple of smaller ones below. So we have an ascent here. Don't know how high, it's got to be 150 feet I would have thought. There's a traverse, you can just about make it, that I've passed round, and there is the valley. I decided not to. There is the saddle, which I decided not to ascend. And these are the pointless peaks that I climbed maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. Quite considerable actually. I'm quite surprised with myself. So down below is from whence I started. Now on the ridge, which is immediately, the ridge leads down to, or will, to Railroad Pass. There's a previous peak. There's a cairn immediately in front of me. There's Boulder City Rifle and Pistol Club blazing away. And a complete panorama. That's interesting over there with Eddie's Trail. That's always worth. It's easy going and you can gain height fairly quickly. But this is rather nicer here. Totally unexpected today. So we found some gold explorations. What would be penultimate to the day if you clambered up here with a rope. I'm just thinking, could you abseil off safely? Well, the problem here is the belay. And I would say no. There's no belay point. You'd have to install one or drill. The rock here is not consolidated, so we'll ignore that. You don't kill yourself. And we shall then rumble down. And I think we're going this direction. Yeah, good day. Found this. Just as I was dropping off the cairn, I looked over the edge. It's virtually a sheer precipice. And then I found this. It's a seam. So I retraced on the ridge, northerly sort of direction. There's an old trail that leads down to here. There we are. Isn't that interesting? That's at the peak where I was filming. And it's been exploited. Used chisels on it rather than break the rock away either side. There's the spoil. So do use that. Don't come up through the gully, which is immediately in front. That's a horrible looking ascent, and all the rocks are loose there, so avoid it.